G'day everyone. This video is going to be a little different than my usual videos because as you know, if you saw my previous video, you'll know that I'm taking some time off from working on the bus to rest my arm. And I thought I'd take this opportunity to answer any questions that you guys have. And I've actually been getting some great questions. So in this video, I'm going to do my best to answer some of them. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. The first question is from Erin, and she asks, are you going to get the bus downgraded to drive on a car license? That's a great question, Erin. Now, if you're not sure what Erin's talking about there, here in Australia we have different classes of driver license that allow you to drive different kinds of vehicles, and the license that most people get is an open car license, which basically allows you to drive any vehicle up to 4.5 ton GVM. Now the GVM is the gross vehicle mass, and it's basically the maximum weight that the vehicle can weigh when it's on the road. So that includes the weight of the vehicle itself, the passengers, and any gear that you've got loaded onto it. Now, in Australia, any vehicle with a GVM of more than 4.5 tonnes is classified as a heavy vehicle, and you need a special heavy vehicle licence to be able to drive it. Now, there's different kinds of heavy vehicle licences based on the weight of the vehicle, the number of axles and so on. But with respect to the Toyota Coasters, the normal GVM it varies a little bit depending on what year model coaster you have, but for mine, which is a 2005 model coaster, the GVM from the factory is 4,990 kilos, so 4.99 tonne, which means that you can't drive it on a car license. You need what's called a light rigid heavy vehicle license to be able to drive it. I've actually got a heavy rigid license because I got that when I had my first bus, which was a lot bigger. So I'm actually already licensed to drive vehicles as big as the coaster, no problem at all. Now, a lot of people get their coasters downgraded to have a GVM of less than 4.5 tonne, and that means that it's no longer classified as a heavy vehicle. They don't need a special license to drive it. They can just drive it on an ordinary car license. The other benefit of downgrading the bus is that in some states, and Queensland where I live is one of them, all heavy vehicles have to have an annual inspection to be able to stay registered and stay on the road. And that's a bit of a pain, especially if you're traveling and you want to go interstate. And there are also other restrictions if you've got a heavy vehicle. So for instance, you can only park it for a certain period of time in a built-up area. There are restrictions on where you can park and so on. So there are definitely benefits to downgrading your bus so that it's no longer classed as a heavy vehicle. Now, the downside to that, of course, is that once you've downgraded the coaster, that's 500 kilos less that you're able to carry. So you have to make sure that your build is very lightweight and that you don't need to carry a lot of gear in order to stay under that 4.5 tonne. So to answer Erin's question, am I planning to get my bus downgraded? At this stage, the answer is no, I'm not. So I would love to be able to downgrade my coaster and not have to have the annual inspections and to not be as restricted in terms of where I can park it and for how long. But the difficulty I have is that I am planning to take my business on the road with me. So I'm going to be living full time in my bus, and I'm also going to be working out of my bus as well. So for those of you who don't know, I have a handmade business called Little Dear Studio, and I make handmade notebooks and journals and other stationery items that I sell online and at markets and so on. And so I need to be able to carry a fair bit of gear in order to make those books. So not just the materials like paper and board that I use is quite heavy in itself, but then I also have all my tools. You know, I have things like a guillotine and a sewing machine, a printer. I've got a fair bit of stuff that I need to carry, and I don't think, even if I pared that down to the bare minimum, I don't think I would be able to get everything that I need in the bus and stay under that 4.5 tonne. So I'm going to see what the bus weighs when I finish the build. I'm trying to use lightweight materials as much as possible and keep the weight of the build itself down to a bare minimum so that I've got the maximum amount of weight allowance on top of that for all the gear I need to put in. If by some chance I can get everything in the bus that I need to and still be under the 4.5 ton, then yes, absolutely, I'll be getting the coaster downgraded. For me, I just don't think that's going to be a possibility. Okay, so next question is from Kizza23 on Instagram. Are you going to leave your aircon in the front? Yes, I am. So a lot of the coasters, especially the newer models, come with factory air conditioning, and a big part of the workings for that air conditioner are in the ceiling above the driver's area at the very front of the bus. Some people remove the factory aircon. Firstly, to make space, so they've got extra space for storage and things above that driver's cab, but also where I think it's the condenser, whatever that bit is that goes under the bus, they can remove a fair bit of weight if they take the aircon out. I'm not planning to remove mine at all. My air conditioner works really well. It chills the bus down really quickly when you're driving. Personally, for me, I consider it essential to have air conditioning in a vehicle, especially here in Australia where our summers get really hot. I plan on doing a fair bit of travel in the outback and in rural areas away from the coast. So for me, it's just absolutely essential to have air conditioning when I'm driving. And it'll also help to cool the bus down for a while, if I've been driving for some distance and then when I park up at camp, it'll keep the bus cool for a little while. I actually removed the aircon ducts that run along both sides from the front to the back of the bus, so I won't be reinstalling those. So the aircon will be mostly just cooling the front driver's area, which is all I need when I'm driving. And my main living space of the bus is actually up the front with my layout that I have planned. So if I've got that air conditioner on when I'm driving, it'll help to cool that at least the front half of the bus as well. So yeah, I'm planning to leave my air conditioner in at this stage. So the next question is from Gavin. He says, I noted you do not have a shower in your plan. Any reason? You're right, Gavin. In that video that I did where I showed the layout that I'm planning for the interior of my bus, I don't have a built-in shower, but I am actually planning to have a shower in the bus. It's just not going to be a built-in one. So I'm planning to have an Evershower in my bus. And if you guys haven't heard of an Evershower, go and check it out because it's a really cool Aussie invention. It's basically a tent that incorporates a 12-volt pump and a shower nozzle hose, and the idea is that you can pour water into the base of the shower and set up the pump so that the pump pumps water from the base of the shower up through the shower nozzle and basically recirculates it. So you can have a shower for as long as you like on as little as a few litres of water. And if you check out the Evershower website, I think Larry's got some videos on there. One of them is actually shows how we set it up inside his camper van. So it comes with a frame that you can have it completely freestanding outside if you want an outside shower at your campsite. But you can also set it up without the frame inside a camper van or a bus, and you just hook it up to hooks in the ceiling, and you can have a shower in the comfort of your van. And the thing that I like about it is the shower base does have a drain on the bottom, so you could, if you're outside and it was a suitable place to drain grey water out onto the ground, then you could just do that. But if you're inside a bus or if you're parked at a campsite that requires you to be self-contained, if you've got a sink with a grey tank installed, like I'll have, you can just empty the shower by basically aiming the shower nozzle over the sink. And instead of pumping the water back into your shower, it'll pump it out through the shower, into your sink, into your grey tank, and empty it that way. So it's a really cool concept. I struggled for a long time when I was designing my layout, trying to work out where to fit a built-in shower. And a lot of people have showers in their coaster. There's certainly space for it if that's a priority for you. But for me, I had a lot of other things I wanted to fit in the bus, and I had particular ideas about the kind of layout that I wanted. And I just couldn't fit a shower in without having to compromise too many other things. And then I discovered the Evershower and thought, what a fantastic idea, because I don't shower every day, and my plan is that I will use, if I'm camped where there are amenities, I will use camp showers, showers in caravan parks and things like that as often as I can, and my onboard shower will only be for times that I don't have access to showers elsewhere. So I won't be using it that often, and for me a built-in shower was going to take up too much space that, you know, most of the time I wouldn't be using. And not only was finding the space within the cabin kind of living area a challenge, but also finding a suitable place to have the drain underneath the bus, because underneath the coasters there's a lot of stuff directly under the floor, and there's not a lot of places where you can easily fit a drain that, you know, can drain into a grey tank or at least a sump pump or something. So I just decided in the end that for my purposes, for the layout that I wanted, that it was better for me to not have a built-in shower, and I'm planning to use the Evershower instead. So another question from Gavin: did you consider putting water tanks in before laying the new floor? Actually, I did. I know a lot of people do this. I mean, some people don't even go to the effort to rip up the floor like I did and replace it. But a lot of people, when they do replace the floor, take the opportunity to install water tanks and plumbing underneath the frame before laying down the ply on top. I did think about that. But the reason I didn't in the end was because the sort of water tanks that I plan to get for my bus are actually designed to bolt straight up into the floor. They actually have built-in kind of flanges with bolt holes on them, and the actual tank itself bolts up onto the floor. You don't need to fabricate any special brackets or anything to hold them up. So that was the main reason I decided to do it afterwards, because the tanks actually will be bolted into the floor itself. Okay, so next question is from Sue. Actually, Sue has several questions. She asked, how much did you pay for your bus? Where did you find it? Do you have any tips on what to look for when buying secondhand? Obviously, I'd get a mechanic to check it out, but that costs money. So some pointers on what to look for prior to making those arrangements would be absolutely fantastic. That's a good question, Sue. So I'm going to try and do my best to answer all of them. First of all, how much did I pay for my bus? I paid $15,000 for my coaster. So I would say, and I was happy with that. It's certainly not cheap. I wouldn't say I got a bargain, but I think I paid a fair price for my bus given the condition it was in. So my bus is a 2005 model. It had 385,000 Ks on the clock when I bought it, which sounds like a lot, but for a diesel Toyota coaster that's been well serviced, it's hardly anything, and most mechanics would tell you that it's barely been run in at that stage, and it's certainly got a lot of kilometres and a lot of years ahead of it. And it was in really good mechanical condition and had minimal rust. So I'd been looking for several months before I bought my coaster, and wasn't having much luck looking in the usual places online. It wasn't helped by the fact that because of COVID and the travel restrictions, there were a lot more people looking to buy motorhomes and caravans and buses to convert. So the price of all of the RVs and the Toyota coasters, particularly because they're probably one of the more popular size buses for people to convert into motorhomes, the prices of those had all jumped a fair bit just in the previous 12 months because of that. But it is what it is. It was the time that I was looking to buy. So if I'd bought the coaster a couple of years earlier, I probably wouldn't have had to pay as much as I did for it. But in the current environment, I thought $15,000 was a good price, and it was sort of the top end of the budget that I had to spend. So I was happy with that. Where did you find the bus? Okay, so as I said, I was looking for several months before I actually found a suitable coaster that I could afford. So I was looking in the usual places like Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace. There are a few online websites for the sale of buses and trucks and those kind of vehicles. So I was looking on those sites as well. Put links to some of those sites in the description below if you want to check them out. So I was looking at all the kind of usual online places and not having very much luck. If they were in my price range, they weren't really in very good condition. The ones that were in good condition were too expensive for what I could afford. Or the ones that, looked might be all right got snapped up very quickly, of course. So I wasn't having a lot of luck. So what I did in the end, and I highly recommend this approach to anyone who's looking for a bus to buy. I actually sat down one day, got on Google and made a huge list of all the places like childcare centres, nursing homes, RSL clubs, schools, especially independent schools, church groups, bus charter companies, tour companies, basically anyone I could think of that might have a courtesy bus or like a charter bus they might be interested in selling. And I got this big list of over 200 businesses in the greater Brisbane area. And then I sent them all an email, and I basically said, look, I'm in the market for a Toyota Coaster that I want to convert into a motorhome. It's got to be, you know, a certain age. It's got to be in good mechanical condition. I was specifically looking for the plug sliding style entrance door on the side. And I said, if you've got a coaster that you're interested in selling that fits this criteria, or you know somebody that does, please get in touch. I also put wanted ads in some of the bus for sale groups on Facebook as well. I sent this email out to over 200 different people and got maybe half a dozen responses, most of which were, look, I'm sorry, we don't have a bus that fits your criteria at this stage. I think I got 2 positive responses, and one of them ended up being the bus that I bought. So yes, I sent out 200 emails and only got 2 decent replies, but you only need one suitable one in the end. So that's how I bought my bus. And so I ended up getting it from a local bus company, and it was actually still in service as a school bus. And it was in service as a school bus basically until the day I picked it up. And the deal was that they were intending to replace the bus that actually got a new model coaster on order, and they were waiting for that new one to arrive before putting the old one up for sale. So I got in first before they'd even advertised the bus for sale. So I got a pretty good deal in the end that way, and that's how I ended up finding my bus. So I highly recommend that approach, emailing or contacting everyone you can think of in the local area that might have a bus that fits what you're looking for, and you never know what you'll find. Okay, so the next question that you had, Sue, was, do I have any tips for what to look for when buying secondhand? So yes, now I could probably do an entire video on just this question. I'm going to caveat this by saying that I am not an expert, and before I bought my bus I had zero mechanical knowledge, so I'm not in a position to give you any advice about what you should look for in terms of the mechanics of the bus, other than to say if you don't know much about that yourself, then you definitely need to get a mechanic that you trust to look over the bus and check it out for you before you buy. Obviously, when you go to inspect the bus, make sure you take it for a test drive. You know, so obviously check all the basic things to make sure all the lights and the indicators and all that work. You can hear it, you know, start the engine, make sure it runs okay, not making any funny noises or vibrations. You can go through the gears and make sure that that's all, you know, shifting smoothly. Take it on, you know, around the suburbs, but also if you can, take it out on the highway where you can get up to 100 k's an hour and just get a sense of how it feels and how it travels at that speed. You know, basic things like that. If you've had the bus running for a while, take the engine cover off and just have a look at the engine, see if you can see any oil leaks. Likewise, underneath the bus, once you stop it, see if there's any sign of any leaks. I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm not a mechanic. I don't have any real mechanical knowledge. I have like bare minimum layman's knowledge when it comes to mechanics. So my advice would be just get someone who knows what they're doing to have a look at the bus and, you know, check it out properly before you buy it. Now, the Toyota coasters, one of the reasons they're so popular is because Toyota has such a great reputation for being mechanically reliable. They're easy to find parts for, and some of the Toyota engines have a reputation for doing 1,000,000 kilometers or more. But like any engine, that's only possible if they're well looked after and serviced. So you want to make sure that you get some sense of the service history of the vehicle. So you want to ask to see service records, and good owners will be able to show you receipts from all the services that it's had done. Now, my bus, as I said, was a school bus. One of the benefits of buying an ex-school bus is that they need to be well serviced and well maintained in order to stay registered. So here in Queensland, school buses have to pass an inspection every 6 months. So if you've got a school bus that's still in service, then you can be fairly confident that it's passed an inspection at some stage in the last 6 months, and it would have had to have been well looked after in order to be able to stay registered as a school bus. So I would always recommend, if possible, if you're looking for a bus to convert yourself, that you try to get one that is still in service or has only recently been retired from service and has a good service history with records that you can verify. So aside from making sure that it's mechanically sound, the other priority for me was having a bus with minimal or no rust. Now, coasters are apparently notorious for being rusty. So if you're wanting this bus to last for a long time, and especially if you don't have a lot of money or you don't have any sort of welding skills or much experience with treating rust yourself, then you really want to make sure as best as you can that you get a bus that's rust free. Now, it's not always possible to see rust in the frame of the bus until you start actually stripping it, but there are some things that you can look out for. And when you inspect the bus, make sure you take the time and give it a really good, thorough looking over. So especially the common places for the coasters to rust are around the windows. So pay really close attention to all around the window frames, the insides of the doors, the tail lights at the rear of the bus are another common area for rust. So, have a good look around them. If you can, inside the bus, try and just sort of lift up a corner or an edge of it'll have like vinyl flooring most likely on it. Just try and lift that up if you can along the edges to try and get a sense of what the floor might be like underneath. Because if there's been a lot of water getting in, you may not see the water on top of the floor, but you might get a sense of all that plywood underneath is starting to rot and show signs of water damage. So take the time to have a really good look, obviously around the windscreen, the gutter line at the top of the roof, like just about where the gutter is above the windows, is another common place for rust to occur. The seams, if you can get a ladder and just have a look up on the roof, the seams where the different panels in the roof are joined, another source of rust. Definitely take a torch with you when you do the inspection. Get underneath the bus and have a good look from underneath. Not being able to see any rust from the outside isn't a guarantee of the bus being rust free, but it's a pretty good indication that if there is rust there, it's not going to be too bad. If you can see spots of rust visible on the outside, just be aware that anything you can see on the outside is like the tip of an iceberg. It's going to be a lot worse underneath. So just keep that in mind. You may need to factor in the cost of the rust repairs into the purchase price. So for me, when I bought my bus, thankfully it had very little rust visible. I mean, I went around and checked all the windows. There was no rust in any of the side windows or really anything noticeable from the rear. There was a little bit of rust around the windscreen frame. And you could actually see a little bit of that from the inside as well. So I knew that was there. So before I purchased the bus, I got in contact with our local panel beater who's done quite a bit of work for our family, and got a rough idea of a quote as to how much it would cost to get that windscreen rust fixed. And I factored that into the price of the bus when I bought it. So yeah, so just be mindful about that and make sure that you spend a lot of time thoroughly checking the bus over for rust. I guess the other thing that you need to consider is I think it's important to be aware of just what exactly the requirements are for registering it as a motorhome after it's converted, because there are certain rules about things like the type of doors that you're allowed to have and so on. So you need to be mindful of those. So one of the big things that a lot of people get caught out on is that in recent times it's been a requirement that if the bus is registered as a motorhome, it must have at least one outward opening door on the left-hand side or the rear of the vehicle, and that door can't be blocked by beds or furniture of any kind. and you need to be able to step out of that door without needing a ladder or extra steps or anything. So a lot of coasters have what they call a bifold door, so the door kind of opens to, like folds in half like a concertina inside the stairwell. Depending on your engineer or who's going to be signing off on your motorhome conversion, a lot of times that kind of door is not classed as it's not an outward opening door, and therefore it's not a legal sort of a door to have on the motorhome. And people think, well, the rear door on a lot of the coasters is outward opening, but some people signing off on that will not accept that because it's quite a bit higher off the ground. It's not a suitable kind of access door. And also a lot of people want to put the double bed and things at the back and actually block off that door, so they can't use that anyway. So that was one reason when I looked for my coaster that I absolutely wanted a coaster that had the plug style, what they call the gliding side door. So it's the one that kind of opens on the outside, a bit like a van door. It kind of comes out and slides back towards the back of the bus on the outside of the bus. So that is classed as an outward opening door. Doesn't have to be modified at all. So that was just one extra thing I didn't have to worry about, because if you get a coaster with a bifold door, just bear in mind that you may have to make some modifications to that door so that it opens outward in order to be able to register it as a motorhome. Okay, so hopefully that helps. The other thing that I would highly recommend is, if you are thinking about buying a bus to convert yourself, is do as much research as you can before you actually buy the bus and start the conversion. I first made the decision that, yep, I was definitely going to get a bus to live in, and this was the path I was going to take. I decided that back in 2016, and then it took me quite a few years to save up enough money to actually be able to go ahead and kind of make this dream happen. So I had a few years in between where I was just binge watching, as many YouTube videos as I can. I joined Facebook groups and, just spent countless hours just reading through all the posts, asking my own questions. And I mean, for me, that was invaluable because, I learned so much just from seeing other people's experiences and, even just the responses to other people's questions. I kind of developed a really good understanding of the sorts of things to be aware of and what I should be looking for. So I would highly recommend taking some time, if you can, to just do as much research as possible before you actually buy your bus. So YouTube is great. In fact, it's even better now. When I first started researching my bus journey, there were very few Australian videos on YouTube. Most of the bus conversion videos that I was watching and learning from were all in the United States. Whereas now it's become, in the last few years, the whole van life craze has just gone nuts, and it's really quite common now for people to be living on the road and to be documenting their journeys on video on Instagram and social media. So there's actually a lot more information out there now than there was even 3 or 4 years ago. So yes, check out YouTube videos. There are a few really good groups on Facebook, and I'll put the links in the description below. There's a couple of really good just bus conversion in general groups, and then the coaster community in particular is just amazing. The majority of people in the coaster community are just so super friendly and willing to help and give advice, and I've just learnt so much. And I don't think I'd be able to do this conversion myself if it wasn't for the people in those groups, because I'm always in there asking questions and learning, and they're just fantastic. So I'll put a link to the groups that I'm in the description below. So I highly recommend that you get in to Facebook and join those groups, and just, even if you don't feel comfortable asking questions yourself, just take the time to go through and read all the previous posts, because there's almost certainly someone else who's asked the same kind of questions that you have, and you'll be able to see what everyone's responses were. So definitely check them out. I'll also put a link in the description to the NHVR regulations for converting heavy vehicles into motorhomes, because that has that's become like the national standard for the criteria and what's legal for a motorhome conversion. And pretty much most states in Australia now follow those rules. I think WA and the Northern Territory are the only ones who don't. But you know, they have their own similar sets of rules. So I'll put a link to those regulations in the description, because it's a really good idea to read through those and just be aware of what's required before you actually go to buy your bus, because it may influence the kind of bus or the model bus that you're looking for. So yeah, so I hope that answers some of your questions, Sue. But like I said, definitely join the Facebook groups, and feel free to ask as many questions there as you like, because they are super helpful, and that's probably the thing that's helped me the most. Okay, so thanks for sticking with me, guys. So last question is from Sarah, and she asks, where is the one place you're looking forward to visiting in your bus? Okay, so I get asked this question a lot. It's actually really hard to answer because there's more than one place that I'm wanting to visit. I'm fortunate in that I've actually already done quite a lot of travel in Australia, and I've ticked off most of the big things off my bucket list already. So, you know, I was fortunate enough to live in the Northern Territory for a few years, so I've seen a lot of Central Australia and the top end and across through the Kimberley to Broome. I've seen a lot of Queensland. I've been to Tassie many, many times. It's probably my favourite part of Australia. But obviously Australia's a big country, and there's still a lot of places that I'm really looking forward to exploring. The one thing that is still on my bucket list that I'm really looking forward to doing in the bus is going across the Nullarbor. So I've never seen any part of Western Australia south of Broome, basically. And I would just really love to be able to do that trip across the Nullarbor. I love the outback landscape. I would love to see the cliffs and the Great Australian Bight. So I'm really looking forward to that. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit down the track because it's not the easiest of trips to do, especially when you're solo, and I want to make sure that I'm well prepared before I do it. So I'll probably want to spend a little bit of time getting used to the bus and maybe getting a little bit more mechanical knowledge myself, so I'm a bit more confident about doing my own repairs and things before I do that. And also, if I'm going to go all the way over to Western Australia, I want to make sure I've got a really good amount of time to explore that state. So I would wait until I had at least 6 or 12 months free probably to be able to spend over there. But yeah, that's the one place that I'm really looking forward to traveling when the bus is finally finished. So that's it for the questions, guys. Thank you so much for submitting them. I hope I've been able to answer them satisfactorily. You know, if you ever have any questions about anything that you've seen in my videos, or if you want to know more about what my plans are for the bus, where I'm going to be traveling, or you want to know more about this little one, you probably haven't been able to see, she's been off camera, but she's been here the whole time. Yeah, any questions at all, I'm happy to answer them. Just, you know, leave me a note in the comments below. And who knows, if I get enough questions, maybe I'll do another Q&A video down the track. But I'm hoping that my next video will be back to work on the bus, because my arm is actually, it's not 100%, and it's probably never going to be 100%, but it is feeling a bit better. So fingers crossed, I'm going to start trying to get back to work on the bus in the next week or two. So the next video will hopefully be me getting the windows back in and cracking on with some of the other work. So stay tuned for that.